Right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for our monthly Lunch and Learn for the Nonprofit Alliance. This is going to focus on our end of year messaging and fundraising. I know that we have all struggled this year due to COVID, both personally and financially, and with our businesses. So I thought it would be a really good time to have this discussion about how are we going to position ourselves for the end of year, both in our messaging about where COVID has left us, and also in how are we going to boost that messaging and use it as well. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. I'm going to go one by one, introduce them, and then let them say a few words about themselves. So Jeannie, I'm going to start with you. Jeannie Mezzatesta is the Director of Development and Marketing at the Shenandoah Valley Discovery Museum. So Jeannie?
Hey guys, nice to see all of you. Thanks for coming. I currently work here at the museum, and I'm from Winchester, so I'm a native. I went to Hanley High School and West Virginia University, so I've been in our region for some time. I came back here in my mid-20s in marketing and advertising and served on a few boards. So I've been a board member, been at the board level for nonprofits, and served on the Evans Home and ran the Jubilee Kitchen at the First Presbyterian Church. And then I joined the board at Blue Ridge Hospice for 9 years, where then they said, well, you'd be a great person to work here. Could you be our fundraising specialist here? So I took the job there as the advancement director at hospice and was there 9 years. So I've only been here at the museum for a year. So I came out of healthcare fundraising, now I'm in museum. So it's all sort of marketing versus, I think marketing and sales and fundraising are all very similar. So I have a good background, I feel like, to share with you some tips hopefully today.
Great, thank you. Brady Smith is the Director of Development of NW Works. Brady, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I've only been in Winchester for about a year and a half. It seems crazy, but I moved here from Pittsburgh. I worked for an international nonprofit and did fundraising, marketing, and some logistics too for an international organization. I also went to West Virginia. That's where I went undergrad. I just finished my master's degree a couple months ago from Arkansas State. So yeah, happy to be at NW Works. They didn't have any development or fundraising ever before I got here.
Really?
So so this is our 50th year in existence, and we went 49 years with no development or marketing. So now I'm the development director. We have a marketing coordinator, and we're excited for what the next 50 years holds. Hopefully I won't be here all 50 of those years, but.
Yeah, I will say that's not uncommon for nonprofits, especially a small nonprofit like Special Love. They went 35 years before they hired their first director of development. So, and that brings me to Liz Lewis, who is the marketing manager for Special Love. So Lizzie.
For having me, guys. So I am a Winchester native. I went to James Wood. Sorry, Jeannie, with your hand.
My daughter goes to James Wood. It's okay.
Third generation James Wood Colonel over here. So, my first job out of college, I worked for the American Red Cross in biomedical services. So basically I was marketing and sales, hustling people for a pint of blood. I find that if you're willing to talk someone out of a pint of their own blood for nothing but a cookie and a good feeling, that really makes you fearless when you're asking people for pretty much whatever. I worked a little bit in the for-profit side. I did some marketing for a mortgage company, and then it's been about a year and a half, I guess, that I've been here at Special Love, helping to share the stories of our incredible families.
Great. Thank you. So we'd like to have this Lunch and Learn be a discussion. While we have three wonderful panelists, we want you to be able to ask questions, and you can either put the questions in the chat box and we will ask them for you, or raise your hand, or just unmute yourself and ask your question. We really do want to make this a dialogue where everybody learns from each other and walks away feeling like they've spent their noon hour very wisely. So I'm going to start with the first question for all three panelists, and I'll ask them in the order that they just introduced themselves to answer this question. And it starts with, how would you define to donors and the public the impact COVID has placed on your organization, and what is the status of your organization right now? So, Jeannie?
Yeah, so as most of you can kind of probably concur, it's been a rough year. It's been a rough year for everyone from a for-profit and nonprofit world, but we've tried to be super transparent. So some of you may have received a letter we just sent to our donor base basically saying, hey guys, we need you now more than ever. And it's been a very rough year for us. Like you all, some of you mentioned, we didn't have a full-time fundraiser, or we had a part-time fundraiser for a few years, but we haven't had a full-time fundraiser until this past year. So I was just getting into making a difference, I thought, when COVID hit. But our museum had, and we've been really honest about this, our museum had depended on earned income for a long time from admission and field trips and summer camps. And when none of those things happen, you lose a lot of income. So we're trying to make up for it with some contributed. We were kind of at a 70-30 split, which 30% have contributed, which doesn't help when you close your doors for 4 months plus. So I think just telling the community and being honest, like, this is where we've been, this is where we need to be, and we really need you, is kind of where we're standing right now. And I've tried to, from a fundraising standpoint, it's really hard to write a letter to the community and tell them what desperation you are. And you don't like doing it. I mean, I never want to send a letter like that, but you also want them to understand how important this is and that without them, we can't do it. So that's kind of what we're doing at the moment, to let them know we're going to make it, but it's just, we're struggling really hard. And so without the community's help, we won't make it. And I think letting people know that is important. Does that answer your question?
Well, Jeannie, let me ask you too, to follow up
Sure.
on that. How are you presenting the hardships of the organization and having COVID today, and, you know, including the possibilities of closing your doors or having to eliminate programs and services to the community because of what you're experiencing?
Well, I mean, we are trying to market ourselves in a way that shows that we plan to exist, that we plan to innovate ourselves in ways and find new revenues of income and ways to help our community. And that's what we've done throughout COVID, is finding ways to educate. Our primary mission here is educating young children, early childhood development. So I think finding ways, whether it was through Zoom educational, we did a lot of that throughout COVID, where people were in quarantine, is helping parents learn how to educate their kids with activities online and that kind of thing. Now we're partnering with schools so that we can help school children and parents at home. So I think it's just finding new ways. It's nothing we've really ever done before. So it's, new paths and new ways, new streams of income, and just sharing with the community that we're true to our mission. We're not going anywhere. We're going to do the best we can, but without some assistance. And I try to share this with people on my Facebook page, is all of us need the community. Without the community, we can't exist. So I think sometimes community members forget that without them, none of these amazing organizations that you all represent would actually be here. So, I think everyone's understanding, and I've gotten a lot of calls from people saying like, hey, you're not closing your doors, right? It's like, well, we don't want to. And our goal is that we won't, but we really need you. So I think just, reestablishing ways that we can survive. Probably you're all in the same boat.
Right. So Brady,
That's
I'll
where we are.
pose that to you, because certainly NW Works has had a difficult year, and the closing of Firefly.
Yeah, the elephant in every room right now. It's been tough because without clients, we haven't had clients. March 13th was the last day we had clients, full-time, full services in our building. And then from that date until the end of July, we were able to have what is called Medicaid waiver payments, which basically held the spot that our clients had. And that way we could consistently, keep our doors open so that when we were allowed to have clients back, we could. And then those ended. So August was really when we really started to feel just how rough of a year it had been. All the while, we also had to close Firefly down temporarily in June, or until June, from March until June. And then it just did not pick up in the way that we needed it to be able to stand on its own. And so we tried just about everything that we possibly could. And it came down to us having to make a decision between what NW Works was founded on and the mission that we serve, versus, also being able to have a restaurant that COVID really took a toll on. Even worse than what the restaurant business in general is pretty tough to stay alive in. And so you add COVID on top of that and having to be shut down and not having people be able to work or eat inside. It was tough. So, nobody wanted by any means to have to close down Firefly. It's a staple. A lot of people love it. That was our outward facing front in the community. And so it was a decision that really, really took a toll, not only on the people who worked at Firefly, but all of us in the leadership staff that had to dive into it. But at the end of the day, we're refocusing and making sure that our mission is first and foremost. And through COVID, we've been able to make some upgrades to our building and kind of pause in time and take the time without clients in the building to, rewrite curriculum and make physical upgrades that we wouldn't have been able to do if we had people in the building. So it just, as Jeannie's saying, being innovative and creative and doing things we've never done before, virtual job development, and finding ways to still connect with our clients despite them still not being able to be in the building. It's been trying, it's been tough, but it's also given us an opportunity to see what we're great at and what we can continue to build on as we get to whatever this new normal will look like.
Right. So I have to ask, I'm sure everybody here is wondering, is there any chance Firefly will ever come back?
It's a good question. And it's a question a lot of people are interested in. The truth of the matter is that we're looking and have been looking for as long as this conversation's been having, for somebody who loves it and who is in the restaurant business really to take it over. As of now, because we're still in a COVID climate, that has not happened for us yet.
Right.
We still do have the lease. So I can't say that it's never going to happen. We're in control of those conversations for the next, 2 months while we still are paying the rent. But who knows? I can't say no. I can't say yes. It's 2020. Anything can happen, I think. But as far as we're concerned, it's not in the cards for NW Works to be the people who are running it.
Yeah. That's a shame. So Lizzie, I'm going to ask you, and I know that this is asking you to put on the development hat. You're on the development team at Special Love. But if you could talk about how we're talking to donors and the public about what has happened with COVID and what changes Special Love has had to make to its programs.
So the thing that we are really known for primarily is our programs for our children and for our families. And what people don't often know is that we started a program many years ago that's emergency financial relief for those families. And we have seen an incredible increase in the requests for funding. And quite honestly, Jan could tell you more about that as our executive director, but we really wanted to help people understand that while yes, we are bringing the joy to children with cancer and their families, and we are all about bringing fun programs and exciting outreach and programs in hospitals, and we also are providing that support, that financial support when these families need it the most. So we started talking more about that. That really just wasn't something that we were sharing with our community. It was something that if you knew it existed, you knew. And if you didn't, well, you really didn't. And there were a lot of folks that really didn't. So we started sharing more about how much we're giving and what that funding is for. And some of the really heart-wrenching requests that we've received from families. But the fact that it's there and that they can ask for that money has made a valuable impact on those families. And as far as our programs, specifically our camping programs, we're a very analog organization trying to be digital. So this has been a challenging year for sure, but with the help of some technology and some creative planning, we actually this year hosted our first ever virtual camps. So our camp for our siblings of our cancer patients was virtual, and we did a month of programming, all of it pre-recorded video, but there were some interactive pieces every evening during the week, which was a lot, but really good. And then our Camp Fantastic, which is our program for our patients, we were completely virtual with that as well. And for the first time ever, we had kids who were in hospital who were actually able to participate in Camp Fantastic. And that by far is, I think, the coolest takeaway from all of the shenanigans, because that is a program that we will continue to do. It was amazing to be able to get kids involved and engaged in our camp programs while being in a hospital bed.
So I'll elaborate a little bit on what Lizzie said, is that we really had to change all of our programming because we work with immune compromised children and their families. We obviously could not do programs in person. So everything went virtual, and we actually turned that virtual around within 2 weeks to do programs virtually for our families and that. And the response has been overwhelming. The biggest part of what Special Love does is provide a community of support for children and families. And the thought was, how can you do that virtually? Well, you know, they take over. Once you give them a forum, they take over. It's as if you put them in a room together, they take over. If you put them on, you know, a virtual, it takes over. But that was the hardest thing. And as Lizzie said, we did start talking about our emergency financial aid. And by June, we had exhausted all of the funds we put aside for that for 2020. And thankfully, our board came up with the same amount, and we'll finish out the year giving that. So that's, you know, a tough change to make, but we were in the position that we were able to make that. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
We really championed shared experience. We wanted, as far as our virtual programming, we wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, even if we couldn't all be in the same room, we wanted to try to provide as much shared experience for the campers and for our families as possible. Even, you know, as current as this past Saturday, we did our virtual Oktoberfest, which is a family weekend that we do, and sent out our camp boxes and did all of our virtual programming all day long on Saturday. So,
Do you want to talk a little bit about what the camp boxes are? That's a
sure.
Yeah.
So we had to get real organized, which is not always our strong suit. And we created our list of all of our schedule for camp activities. And we went and purchased all of those things. So we had everybody registering for camp just like they normally would. And then we built camp in a box, and we mailed out a box that had all of your supplies for every activity, just as you would have if you came to camp in person. And then we had an unboxing moment where everyone was on a Zoom, or in our case, WebEx. And everybody unboxes and they pull out all the projects and they identify who's going to do what and when that is in the schedule, and providing all of the materials that they needed. And then you just show up just like you would at camp in a regular camp class. And that was an adventure because we've never done anything quite logistically like that. But we've got down the science now, so we're rocking and rolling. But we do still want to be in person one day.
Definitely.
One day.
All right.
I
So
was gonna say, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was going to say we actually had to do the same thing, Lizzie. So same thing here with virtual summer camps throughout the summer. And, you know, we're a hands-on museum, so it's kind of tough because we're doing it over, delivering it virtually.
Yeah.
But we also did some kits so the kids could pick up and their parents could curbside pick up. And I mean, it presented new challenges, but I think everybody learned from it, and it actually prepared kids for school, because they did that this summer with us, and they kind of got the understanding of how to communicate with others, you know, via screen and with their educator. And so, I mean,
That's a great point. I'm going to write that down. That's really good. I didn't even think about us doing that. Good job, Jeannie.
Oh, thanks.
Well, we had the added stress that our families are up and down the East Coast, and we had kids as far away as Utah participating. So trying to figure out, when do you have to get a box in the mail to get to them in time for camp? And since mail isn't running normally, what might that be? So yes.
And we do have a sibling who lives in Italy who did get on in the middle of the night to participate in evening classes with us, which was really cool.
We did not mail him a box, however.
We did not, because international shipping is really, 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 really expensive. Holy cow, we had no idea. But we did send him a supply list, and he participated with everything and was actually awarded one of our camp awards this year because he was such a champion for getting excited and keeping spirits high.
So let me ask each of you too, what are you planning to do for end of year fundraising? How are you going to make, and how are you, and are you going to make changes to what you normally would have done at end of year? based on what you've seen since March? And Jeannie, I'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I threw a wrench in everything by just sending an appeal in September, the end of September. But it seemed like the right time to do so because we really needed to communicate with our donors and give them an idea of what was happening here. So we are seeing a lot of donations come in, and it's amazing the community support that now I see as a sort of a new museum member in the last year here. And it's amazing. People that have come out who haven't given to us in 5 years and they're giving back. So I'd recommend that you do reach out to donors within, the 5-year period. But I'd asked that we would raise $100,000, which was the big goal. I've totally realized that, but we're not there, not close, but we're not there yet. So I think by the end of year, I'll likely send another appeal saying, hey, we're getting there and you've have been amazing, but we still need to reach this in order to get where we're going. And this morning we had a meeting with a community member who suggested maybe more specific letters to like segregated populations, like maybe we're sending specifically to educators or specifically to physicians or specifically to with a message that they can relate to. So I think I'm going to incorporate that in our end of year ask as well, is asking specifically instead of my mass, letter that goes to a larger population, but something more specific, like to physicians about children's education and the importance, and also to educators, like, hey, we're doing the best we can to sort of supplement this year since it's so different with COVID, and also to thank people for continuing to come into our doors. I mean, there are a lot of people that are visiting us and bringing their kids and venturing out, and we need that. I mean, that's what we really need is people to come through the door as well. So I think it'll be a thank you, but I'm not going to give up on my end of year. A lot of people want to give it end of year, and I definitely want to be one of their opportunities. And so many people care about children and education and their well-being. But I'll tell you, it's been tough because being up against some of the other social needs like hunger and homelessness. I mean, there's a lot of need right now, and so many deserved charities here that need our funding. So it's sort of standing out and talking to the right audience that I think cares about us as one of their top priorities. So choosing those, looking at history, that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. Brady, do you want to answer the same question?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a little different because the needs are so vast this year. A lot of times you want to be programmatic and you want to have a goal to raise this much money for this thing. A lot of times people really want to give money to a thing that they can see they've given money to. It's kind of like when you go outside to mow your lawn and you start mowing it and you can see how good it looks because you did that, and then how much more work still needs to be done. It's kind of like that. Well, the lawn is so big for us right now, and I'm sure it's just as big for every other organization, that it's hard to nail down just one thing. And because of the wide array of services that we offer, we have a lot of different needs. And so we're really going to focus more on trying to raise money that is unallocated versus being allocated for a specific project. Because without having clients in the building and without being able to offer services and then also bill for services, then we're at a very large deficit. So we're just facing problems that we've never faced before. And so it's coming up with innovative ways to really be able to see that. So we're going to do some things between November 1st and the end of the year that we've never done before, as far as marketing campaign, as far as using video as a tool, and it's really reaching out in more segmented ways rather than just trying one or the other. So it creates more work for us, but I guess that's called job security. And I don't think any of us are upset about that. So, but yeah, it's going to be different, and it's hard to really set a goal as far as a monetary goal because, we just aren't really sure what to expect yet. So,
Right. So Lizzie, I'll ask you the same thing.
And guys, she's really putting me on the spot because she's going to write down everything I say. That way I'm held to it and I have to do all these things. I see what you did there, Jan. So I think it all comes back to when we're talking about social media, and I am the marketing lady on this panel here, right? So marketing only, I should say. It comes back to all of these folks that follow you on your various channels. It's because they feel connected to your mission. it's not because you're giving out coupon codes or you're just putting up memes of cute puppies, right? Like, they believe in what you do. So the most clear-cut way to attract them to supporting you is to keep connecting them to your mission. I have the privilege of having really cute kids that I can put their faces on stuff. And that's really awesome. And I earned that because mortgage is not as much fun to market. So I did that for a little while, and now I have cute kids, which is my consolation prize. But, you know, Brady hit the nail on the head. He's looking at my paper, I guess. Video is key because people are lazy and they don't want to read your stuff as much if they don't have to, even if it's so beautifully written and you earned your Grammarly subscription for the month. They don't really care. So they want to see cute whatever or pretty whatever or whatever your impact statement is, and everyone on here has something different. And I see that there are so many folks who are representing organizations where you can't necessarily share end result information because of HIPAA or because of privacy things or because they're 100% confidential. Like, I have the privilege of sitting on the board of Concern Hotline, and yeah, I can't call those folks back and ask them if they'd talk about why they called in and if it made a difference in their life. But what I can do is help show how many calls we're taking or what areas we're serving best or how long we've had these volunteers because they believe in the mission and they understand firsthand that, you know, it has an impact. So bringing people back to what your mission is, I think that's the most clear-cut way to get to those donors, because Jeannie is
Travis, your people are here.
Jeannie is totally right.
Travis.
That there are so many needs out there and so many immediate needs that we are not necessarily coming up against, because I think there's more than enough to go around, but it's just making sure that your stuff is cutting through the noise. And at the end of the day, it comes back to these supporters support you for a reason. Remind them of what that reason is.
So, Lizzie, you talked about social media, so I'm going to jump to social media. And I'm going to ask each of you, what new revenue streams have you tried that are through social media? Are you doing Facebook campaigns? Are you doing anything on Instagram? Are you using Twitter at all? What are you finding are good for you? So, Lizzie, I'll start with you.
Okay. So we use Facebook a lot. And I know that everyone says, oh, well, Facebook is for old people or whatever. Well, no, it's not. It's for everybody. And remember that the more seasoned people in the world often have more discretionary money that they can share with you. So don't write them off just yet. Donate buttons are great. We did not utilize them as much when I first started, and we've really expanded utilizing the Facebook fundraiser. And remember that as of right now, Mark Zuckerberg is still covering all of those fees for processing that money. So if someone gives you $20, you get that $20. And I can almost guarantee that none of you can even say that about your own website, because I know we can't. So having Facebook, it's really simple for people to use. People are comfortable with it. They trust it for the most part. That's one that I push a lot. And remember that your followers can add a donate button to their own posts as well, which helps them feel like they're championing your cause also. We don't run a lot of fundraisers ourselves, but we do have a lot of folks that we encourage to run their own fundraiser. So like birthday fundraisers are great. Specific cause, like if your cause has a month that's associated with it, like for us, that's September, that's Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. You know, we had some of our supporters who ran fundraisers for us. As far as Instagram, I don't know if you're aware of this, but on Instagram stories, you can add a donate button. We have not had great success with that. The donate button is kind of clunky. It's very large. It covers about a third of what you're trying to put on your image. And that's unless you zoom it way down and then you can't even read what it says. So it's not something that we spend a lot of time on. Now, I'm not a great tweeter. It's just, I'm very verbose. So limiting me to 280 characters makes me uncomfortable. So I'm not as familiar with running fundraisers with Twitter, but we do consistently share the same messaging on Twitter as we do with Instagram, with Facebook, with LinkedIn. trying to keep things as consistent as possible. And there's other things I could totally jabber on, but I'm confident that there are better contributors. So who's next?
We actually had someone who says we use Facebook a lot as well. We do videos on alum that have been through the program, as well as put a donate button, which is terrific. Brady, how about you with new revenue streams and different platforms?
Yeah, we've used Facebook a lot this year for some of our programmatic stuff. So around Easter, we did an Easter. None of our guys were in the building, so we decided to take Easter baskets, play Easter Bunny, and take them all to our clients' group homes. And so we did a Facebook ask for that. So that
and that was so cute. I remember seeing that. Great job.
Yeah, and so people were able to use or to see, because you like the GoFundMe style where you can see that type of progress. But if you use another avenue other than GoFundMe, then you really don't want to make it so that you have all these different sites where you can give money to. So we use Network for Good, which is who Facebook pays out through. And so it's all still coming through that same channel for us. And so we did a donate page for that. In 24 hours, we raised over $500, and we were able to deliver 24 Easter baskets. And then we did the same thing at the end of April and into May, because we wanted to replace all of our flooring. Same type of project. It went all directly to the flooring. So I like it uses that, you can see the meter of how much is being raised and who raised what, and you can directly thank people. And so that works really well. Then we've also started to use our text to give option a little bit more. We had it and we had tried it a little bit in 2019, but the urgency wasn't there because we still had a lot of FaceTime. I still had lunches all the time. Last month when I reconciled my credit card statement, there wasn't one luncheon with a donor on there. And that was like, oh my gosh, what in the world? What is my job? So this texting to give, it's a whole real easy option. And it really doesn't matter what your database is if you use one, but you can get on, I think it's called Give Lively. And all you do is set up your bank account and you can have unique codes set up. So if you were to text NWWorks to 44321, it goes directly to a bank account that's just for NWWorks.
Nice plug, Brady. Nice.
No, Give Lively. Anybody can do it. You go get your own number, and it's easy. And we found a lot of success with that too. When we did an event, we did our first event of the year. I had to cancel 3 events in 2020. We finally did our first event in person in September. And we used that text to give for the first time and raised over $3,000 just in that hour where people had that number. So that's really, aside from social media, that text to give is great because then you can also market that. You can also market the text this to this, and instead of, so on Instagram, we did that a lot. Twitter, we're starting to try. We finally unlocked our Twitter username that the password had disappeared of somebody who used to work here. So for the first time in over a year and a half, we have access to our original Twitter and those followers. So that's good too. But I really plugged that text to give. And let me see it. I will look for the URL that I'm talking about and put it in the chat.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeannie, how about you?
We definitely use social media with a very small budget for advertising and marketing. We use social media a lot. So
What's a budget?
exactly, especially this year. But we find we have good interaction with people on social media. So we do get comments and shares. And I mean, I was really shocked when we put the recent appeal letter on our social media. It occurred to me how many people actually care about what we do because 572 people shared it. And we ended up with a reach of almost 62,000 people because people shared it. So encouraging your followers to share. And I don't know that I even said share, but they did because they care. So we ended up getting donations even from Ireland and California and Canada. And so people who just, I think if your followers can show that they care and they tell their friends they care, then they care too. Mm-hmm. And what that's done for us is brought new people into the fold because we know we're reaching the people that already know about us pretty well. but it's reaching people who don't already know about us. It's the challenging part. And it's not always easy when you don't have a budget to put new ads out there and new advertising all the time. So I think boosting is pretty important on Facebook anyway, because it's inexpensive, and if you all have done it, you can target either region or age group, and that way you do reach people who are using social media that maybe don't follow you. And I think that's pretty important for all of us to get our word out, mission out there. We also use Instagram and we use Twitter. I don't really use LinkedIn for us, but we're going for young families and parents. So I think what we're using works for us. I do find that when we post pictures within the museum and of children, we get a lot more hits and a lot more likes. People like to see real people. They're not as crazy about graphics as they are real pictures. I think it also works to show families that kids are in the museum, they're wearing masks, and it's a safe environment. So it's actually defining to them that it's okay to come back to the museum now. Look at what's happening. They can see what's going on, and also keep our exhibits fresh in kids' minds. So they're like, oh, there's that. I love that one. I want to go back to the museum, so we can get people back in the door. So I think in your cases, maybe showing people, like Brady was saying, maybe showing things maybe where you are with what your clients usually do or in your facility, or showing them, I know concern could show people working to say, hey, these are real people who actually care about you. Really catering it to what you think the people looking at social media want to see about you, not about what you want to show, but maybe what will bring them back or donate or get involved or come visit you or inquire. So it's sort of changing your thoughts to what are they thinking, not what I'm thinking. Because when you're inside the building, it's easy to be like, well, I want to show all this stuff.
Right.
And they don't always care. What do they want to see? So I think changing the way you think about it. But social media is key, I think, for nonprofits. So we use that a lot. And I don't think we could do it without it, actually, at this point.
Peaceful Field Sanctuary. Can you unmute for a minute and tell us about this platform you've been trying to use and grow in? I've never heard of this.
Hi, this is John. Yeah, sure. So Patreon is, in essence, basically kind of like a pay-per-view Facebook. It is a means where you can share media content. Most folks and you would customize and tailor the content specifically for them. And you can have different levels of access that can be based on the amount of giving. So it's a monthly giving program that's set up for that. And you can, again, customize the experience and the things and the content that you give to them based on their level of involvement. Initially, I believe it was geared mainly for artists, for painters and musicians, to be able to get folks to support their work, to produce their work. But it's a platform that's usable by everybody. So as a nonprofit, and from our end, an animal nonprofit, so it's a little more abstract with what we do. It took a little bit of time, a little bit of work to figure out how we can tweak and customize these levels, and some trial and error, some things that haven't worked. But we've really grown and developed recently here the last, I'd say, about 2 months, on how to really connect with people that way. And it's really kind of grown and taken off. And we now use that platform as our main push for individuals that want to give monthly, because of all the specialized content and exclusive content that they can get for doing so.
Does anybody have any questions on that platform? I personally had never heard of it.
I do. So it's a subscription by people who are interested in your mission, or it's your subscription? I'm just confused on that.
Oh, sure. So what it is, so it's a platform, and again, it's pretty similar to Facebook, where you can post text and pictures, right. Also video. They have a partnership with YouTube, so you can put the link of any YouTube video in there, and it's pretty seamless with how it appears. And so you create custom levels that can be based on anything, and you set the dollar amount, and supporters will choose whatever level that works great for them. And so they are committing to give that amount every month. Okay. It's deducted automatically from the credit card information that they provide and do that. And then in return, then you would customize and give whatever things back to those supporters. And again, you can have it where everybody gets the same, and you can customize it so that, for example, somebody who chooses to give $500 a month receives more content from you than somebody who does $5 a month. And you can actually, the material that you share on the platform, you can set it so that it is viewable and interactive with the combination of your levels that you set up.
Wow. Okay.
I've never heard of it.
Is there anyone else who'd like to share some different platforms they've been using? I know Kim Japel, you are on here, I believe, and I know Special Love is using a lot of different platforms. Do you want to share any of the ones that you're doing?
And Kim, if you don't want to, I will.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, so I know we've talked about all of our social media platforms that we use, but we've found a couple of new ones this year. We made our 5K virtual, and we are using Give Butter. And it's kind of it's another platform where it is free to open up campaigns and things, but then they have options for creating spaces for tickets as well as donations. And there's a way that users can pick up or donors can pick up the fees for you, so you're not seeing any of the fees on the back end, things like that. So that's Give Butter.
It does do texting as well. That is something you can
I was going to say texting. And they are in the final stages of getting Venmo involved as well, meaning people who want to do events like live, having people be able to share and be giving money via Venmo, which Venmo was originally really kind of closed off to a lot of charity giving, but they've been one of the platforms that they've been working well with. I know they also partner with Bloomberg some as well, to create that space. And then we also use for silent online auctions, we use the Give Smart platform, lots of give involved. Keeping them all straight sometimes can be a little challenging, but we also use GiveSmart, which is a wonderful platform. It is something that you pay a yearly subscription to, but then you can hold basically all the campaigns that you want and be able to both share content, have auction items up, be soliciting donations, and also sharing that sometimes with your fellow beneficiary events and things like that, so it became a resource not only for our events, but maybe other community events as well.
Great. Thank you. Anyone have any questions on those two platforms that Kim talked about? Want to hear a little more about, or? No.
I will Google those. Give Butter is an interesting name. I will check that out.
It is, and they're a very interesting group of people. They're super helpful, and once they get their silent auction piece finished, then they are full service pretty much and they're partnering with another organization that does video, like virtual thank you videos, and I just watched a whole demo on this last week, and it's pretty cool. And yes, Give Butter is the weirdest name, but when you see the CEO address in a video, you understand why. He's like 22 and super creative, and created this in his dorm room, and
oh my gosh,
yeah, right? very much New York, like they want to give the butter, make the butter.
Actually, one's in Tel Aviv, so yeah. So how many, I'd like to know, how many of you have gone to doing virtual fundraising events? Like, you've had to cancel your gala or your golf tournament or your 5Ks or your bake sales or your, crab feast. How many of you have gone to virtual galas or virtual events, and what did you use to do that? And how successful was that? Lizzie?
We did. I mean, you know that, but, and most of you do too, because I shared it all over Facebook. We did have our golf tournament in person. We were able to socially distance that, and we had to push it back again and maybe a third time, I don't know. Our gala was virtual, and of course, Kim mentioned that our 5K is virtual later this month, and you can see that over this shoulder here. If you have any questions, you can go to fallinlove5k.org. That'll take you to our Give Butter page. Our gala was quite successful. We were fortunate enough to have gained all kinds of eyeballs on that, and Jeannie was talking about shares and the reach, and that reach on our gala video was gigantic, and we raised, I'll be honest, more money than I thought we were going to raise. So I'm incredibly positive about our virtual gala, which consisted of a pre-recorded video. We did, it was an hour and 10 minutes long, and we took that opportunity to once again utilize video, and we had some interview questions for families that we have supported, some of our big donors who are very passionate about what we do, gave them an opportunity to really speak about what the mission means to them, and just sharing what it means to be a part of the Special Love family. And I think that reached a lot of folks, more folks than we probably would have gotten if we'd done it in person. So,
Jeannie, have you done any virtual?
We gave it a shot. We did a virtual race this summer and it was right when it started in June 1st, was for the summer, where people could choose their own activity and log their miles basically through a company called Charity Footprints. It wasn't wildly successful. I mean, I'd say we raised money, we didn't lose money, but I wouldn't say that it was wildly successful for us. But I think that it was just a hard time where people were trying to figure out what they were doing and with their kids. And I don't know, I just think that it was hard for people to take on yet something else. That's my opinion. Mm-hmm. I did it, but I'm the fundraiser, so of course I did it. No, we had some participation. We just didn't have as much as we'd hoped, but that was okay. I mean, you test the waters. Not everything is going to be successful. We know that. So we did our best on that end. But I think some of the virtual stuff can work, and I love the idea of doing a video. And I think having your supporters talk about your mission and show some of the end result and sending something like that out is a great way to raise money by sharing with people your impact. So that was really good. Smart of you guys. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. Brady, how about NW Works?
Yeah, so we, again, like I said, we had never had any fundraising things, and that really meant events either. And so everything that we started from last June when I started on was new. And we had gotten our biggest fundraiser ever, where we were propped to make a lot of money, was March 27th, supposed to be March 27th. And we had worked on it for 8 months. And obviously March 13th happened, and so we had to postpone it, and we had to postpone it again. And finally we're like, okay, look, this is not going to work. And the reason I made that call was because we had never done it before. Mm-hmm. And when you've never done an event and people don't know what to expect, it was of my thinking that it likely wouldn't have been what I wanted people to remember, right? So for this first event I had in mind, I wanted to set the precedence for future events. And so by having it virtually, although we could have done a good job, it was, I think, more worth it for us in the long term to be able to build the brand of what that event will look like than it would have been to try and piecemeal it together to make money right now.
Right.
And so, so we did some things, we were creative. We did end up being able to have our farm to table event, that was our 5th one. And we could have done that virtually, but I think it worked out the way that we did it, socially distant. We had to cap the number of people that were there. So the first real virtual thing that we have going on, it's actually going to be hybrid. And it's in a couple of weeks. On Halloween, we have our first 5K. 5Ks are easy to do virtually because people can run a 3.1 mile course anywhere they want. But there are still also people that want to get out and get back to an in-person event. And because it's outside and because it's, a physical thing, it's easy to keep people socially distant. So we made it a hybrid event so that you had a choice. If you wanted to be in person, we have a specific number of registrations that you can get. So we did cap it just to make sure that we can ensure as much distance as possible. But then we gave that hybrid option. So the hybrid option has not been popular. We've been making it, we've been marketing it for about a month now, when the hybrid option, by far people are going in person versus the virtual. So It might be because we gave them the option. I'm not sure, but we've seen a lot more people interested in actually coming and running the morning of than doing it on their own. So.
Well, so speaking about events, and we've all had events that we had to postpone and postpone and postpone. Special Love ended up with all three of their major fundraising events within a month of each other that we're doing virtually, and it's a little crazy. But how many of you have seen, your sponsorship fall off? Have you been lucky enough that, Brady, you're talking about this event that you had and you had to postpone. Did you have sponsors that had already given you the money? And so were they generous enough to say, keep that money, don't move it to next year, keep it, we want a refund? How did that work for you?
Yeah, so the event that I'm speaking of in March was actually a no sponsorship event. It was all individual donors. And so from my point of view, it makes it much easier to keep the gift because they've made the gift. They didn't make it because of an event. They made it because they wanted to make it. So that event, yes, the gifts that we had already secured and had been promised, we were able to keep for last fiscal year. The place where we saw sponsorships fall through was at our farm to table event. And that was because people just couldn't commit to being able to write sponsorships because we really work with as many small businesses as we can.
Right.
They usually can't afford sponsorship packages for bigger events. And so we try to work with them and do almost a price per or a pay what you can type of sponsorship where we give you as much of value in the sponsorship that meets your budget as you can. And this year we just weren't able to secure as many, not because people weren't interested, but because people just couldn't. So there were several between last year's event and this year's event. We had about 66%, I'd say, of the sponsorship dollars that we did last year. So we did lose a lot from last year because of COVID. But individuals have not been nearly the same. Individuals still, maybe more so, have more money in some instances to give than they did last year. So it's multifaceted, but as far as sponsorships, it's not because they've lost interest. It's just because they don't have it to give. And they're just as concerned as we are on losing support. So
there's nothing worse than building that momentum for an event and really be doing well, only to have this hit and you say, okay, I'm going to move it a month, and then you have to. So Jeannie, I'll ask you the same thing. What have you seen with your sponsors?
Well, we had some sponsors that had committed to the whole year and underwriting some like admission to the museum and that kind of thing. So when we closed for 4 months, we were concerned because we weren't fulfilling our end of the deal. But they've all stayed true to their, investment, and they all believe in what we're doing. So they've been super generous. We've been lucky.
Wonderful.
And we did have to cancel our annual gala, which is our one sort of big fundraising effort of the year, in August. And we usually have a 5K in October. Both of those were postponed. We are trying to buy an exhibit that would be a pop-up on our roof for the winter that we hope we can have a couple outdoor small events to sort of make up some of those dollars. So I am collecting sponsorships now for that event. We're keeping it kind of hush-hush because it's going to be fun and different, and y'all be surprised. So when you find out, but hopefully we'll feel comfortable being outside. That's part of, I think, what Brady was saying too, like being outside, people feel somewhat comfortable doing events like that, but it's always weather dependent. So, as fundraisers, it's like we try not to do outdoor events that much because you just never know. But
I'll say for the first time ever, it actually rained a little bit on our farm to table event. And people actually said, you know what, like it's kind of perfect for 2020. It rained for about 5 minutes, and it wasn't a downpour by any means, drizzle. But then as the rain started to taper off, there was a rainbow over Middletown, and people were like, what? This is perfect. So
yeah.
So don't let the weather
is
off and let it really bad.
Yeah. Lizzie, how about Special Love?
Well, I don't know that I'm super qualified to talk about Special Love's donors and sponsors, but I would say that, we were very fortunate that our sponsors hung on with us. And Jan kind of alluded to this a few minutes ago, but we were rocking and rolling, and our director of development crushed it getting in sponsors for the gala. And then we had to move it and then move it and then move it and then make it virtual. but they still hung on, which was amazing. So, you know, hopefully they will continue to hang in there with us and be back for next year's gala, which we're already starting to talk about. As far as I can actually speak a little more about Concern Hotline, and every year we do the fish fry. This year was the 21st year. And we were a little worried because that's a big outdoor party with a whole bunch of really awesome people and beer vendors and catfish, which I don't get, but whatever. And then all of a sudden we can't do it because we can't have these people all together. So we convert into a drive-through, and we lost sponsors. We lost sponsors not only because they didn't want to be part of a drive-through, but also because they just didn't have it this year. They just didn't have the funds to be able to back up those sponsorships that we've relied on for over 2 decades for some of them. But we were incredibly lucky that people came out in droves, and we still sold 1,200 fish dinners that night, even though it was just a drive-through, and we still came within, well, I mean, I can say it, right? I don't think it's a secret. I don't know. Don't tell Rusty. We raised like $23,000 that night, which is amazing. Because we did have some sponsorships, but more or less it was just people buying tickets and donating money and wanting to support the cause. So, you know, where some of our sponsors fell through, the community rallied back and supported us very much like Jeannie was talking about. So, you know, this is a very giving community, and we're super fortunate to have them.
Okay, well, so I'd like to open it up to our participants today and see if anybody has any questions that they'd like to pose to the panelists or anyone else on the meeting today. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question.
And in the meantime, while they're thinking about that, just because I know how there's always like quiet, I was just going to say, you know, speaking of sponsors and speaking of individuals, I mean, I think we've been pretty lucky this year that individuals have really stepped up. And I think I was just going to give you guys this advice because I know most of you aren't fundraisers. You know, a lot of the EDs are in that position, but maybe don't do as much fundraising. And I think it's just so important to stay in touch with your donors and tell them what's going on and have conversations, because I think the more we were open and honest and told them where we were, the more they want to come to your rescue. Where if you're not being transparent, they just don't know that you need them. If you don't ask, you're not going to get those dollars. So I feel like we did a good job throughout this COVID period of staying in touch with our donors and receiving donations in return by telling them, hey, this is where we are. So if you all don't have development people on your staff and you are that person, be sure you're reaching out to all of your donors that give, you know, regularly, so they know, so that they feel part of the decision making in their family, and that they know what's going on, that they're part of what you do and your success. So
that's a good point.
I think we sometimes overlook our volunteers as not necessarily as donors themselves, although a lot of them do, but as opinion leaders out in the world to share what's going on with. They're obviously connected with our organizations and with our mission, and even with our clients who utilize our services. And so keeping them informed, coming back to what Jeannie is saying, you know, keeping them in the loop as to where you are and where we are as an organization and what people can do to continue to support. I think they are super helpful with that too, because it comes off from us as like, hey, you know, we're really awesome, and don't forget, if you have some extra change in the couch cushions, that would be great. And then from them, it's like, hey, y'all, open your wallet. Like, I know you have $10. Like, and they can say that, we can't. So keeping them informed as to what you really need. I think Brandon at the Rescue Mission does a really good job of this, like yesterday on video, talking about the things that they need at the mission to support a client of theirs. I know, and I barely scrolled through Facebook yesterday, don't tell my boss, and I saw that video, and he does a really nice job of keeping the public, whoever that may be, connected to what they're trying to do. And so I think the more that we strive to do that, I think the better off we'll be overall in general.
Great. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. I'd like to know how you did that. What kind of different ways did you connect with your donors and keep them in touch? Just, I mean, we do that as much as we can, but I'd love to have different ideas of how to approach that.
Brady, you want to start that one?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, aside from the obvious of, Facebook updates, emails, and stuff like that,
Right.
we had the unique opportunity in the midst of everything when we celebrated our 5th-year anniversary, really to engage with our entire list for a specific reason. And for us, that meant a lot of handwritten cards because, I don't think it's a secret. Most of our followers have followed NW Works for a long time. We're not a new organization. And in saying that, most of our donors would much prefer to receive snail mail from us than an email. And so we found, I have this thing behind me with so much stationery and so much correspondence in it, because that's really what this summer became, is if you didn't have a relationship well enough with this donor to give them a call and feel comfortable doing it, then writing a letter was the next best thing. And we were able to come up with some new pieces of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like collateral, to give updates of what we were doing. So we came out with like our first ever marketing or our development update. We came out with a COVID progress report instead of an annual report, because it really wouldn't have mattered. It was 6 months of COVID and 6 months of not COVID. So instead, we just did a progress report that we sent out to all of our people. We utilize texting. Like I said, not only is there a text to give option, but through the Network for Good platform that we use, if we have texts or cell phone numbers, we can actually text our donors, and then you can make it real one-on-one. Some of our bigger donors, I make videos for, so I can get on and just straight from my computer, just make a quick video, personalize it. Hey, Julia, we're doing great. Thank you so much for XYZ. We really couldn't do this without you, blah, 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 blah. People love that. People love when you take the time to make a video. Texts are great, emails are great, snail mail is great. But if you have the capability to just open up your phone, almost everything nowadays has a webcam, and then send it to them either via text or email, I've found that is very, very popular. So I would say those main things kind of building up, depending on the stewardship of your donors.
Great. Jeannie?
Well, Barbara, I think I would start with phone calls, because for me, having a conversation, when I can talk to someone and they can ask questions and I can answer their questions, that's my favorite, because then it may lead to a different conversation about something else. And it's a two-sided. So that worked well, to reach out to people and make a phone call. We also asked a few of our supporters and board members to reach out to people that they knew had given to us for a long time. So we were fortunate to have a couple of board members and supporters write letters to bigger donors who they were more influenced by. They weren't my peers, but they were their peers, to say, hey, we really need you now. And that worked really well. We also used MailChimp, and we have a list of supporters on MailChimp that I was able to send a newsletter saying, hey, look, here's what we're doing right now during COVID. Here are pictures of, kids that were influencing in the building with camps masked or whatever it was, so that they knew that we were still true to our mission throughout COVID. So we used a multitude of ways to communicate, but I think it was just really staying in front of them so they knew. Of course, also Facebook and all of the social media ways, but I think phone calls are best. And I think people really appreciate when you take time. And not everybody, I'd have to leave a message, 5 times out of 6, really, but at least they knew I called and it took the time. So I think phone calls are important.
Lizzie?
Barbara, I know at the Front Royal Women's Resource Center, you have grant recipients who are doing incredible things. And unless people are following you on social media or happen to know one of those grant recipients, they don't know what good work you guys are doing. So I think if I were helping you communicate this message, I would say those grant recipients are really great advocates for you. And I know that those grants meant a lot to them and continue to mean a lot to them. And I'm quite certain that they would want to support you with that. Making videos, writing a note, doing an appeal, even if it's kind of a baby appeal. Utilizing those folks that have truly seen what your resource center can provide. I think that helps folks who are out there in the world, maybe professionals who could support what you guys are doing. I think that connects them with the mission a little more.
Yeah, we are actually right in the middle of doing that. We had to make our decision. We had to move in the middle of all of this craziness.
Right, I remember that.
To new offices. So, and we kind of slammed into we made September our annual appeal just because we felt we needed that buffer between other things that we do. And that's worked really well. But we're going to do videos of a bunch of our Dare to Dreamers, and we're going to use that for Giving Tuesday. So that's something we're literally working on right now. And I'm hoping, because we found that, like you said, every time we posted one of our dreamers and on Facebook, I mean, it just went crazy because all of their people, friends of friends, it definitely gets a way bigger audience and appeal than everything else. So in terms of that, yes, I'm absolutely going to follow through on that and do that. It's been one of those things I've wanted to do for almost 2 years now. And so hopefully it will happen. But all these other ideas are just fabulous. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Max Swain at Hanley Library has asked, have you ever provided incentives to your donors to give at a certain level, a logo, merchandise, special gift from the organization, etc.? I will say that Special Love has not done that because they've never invested in any materials until recently, but that's not something we've done. But Jeannie and Brady, I'll ask you, is that something you've done?
I'll answer real quick, Brady. This is always a thing. I think it's okay to give a little something. Like, we have some small stickers if someone joins our monthly club of donating.
I love
like
stickers.
Like that you put on your car, you put on your notebook or your computer or whatever. We don't do a lot of incentivizing like that, other than putting your maybe your name on an exhibit. If you're going to give us, $20,000, I'll put your name on something like that. But as far as other donors, I don't think people want you to spend their money on something for them. And I think that's always been my feeling about it, is they'd rather you put the money towards the mission. That's why they gave it to you.
Right.
So unless someone specifically asks for something like that, I don't think that's something we do here, or wouldn't.
Brady, how about
you, Brady?
NW Works?
Yeah, I'll go on the flip side of that. I've always looked at a dollar, and the best organizations out there that have, billion-dollar budgets tend to spend about 10 to 20% on stewardship of donors in one way or the other. So when you go to Charity Navigator, you see 87% of funds are spent on programs. Well, the other 13% goes to, your overhead, so to speak. And included in that overhead usually means stewardship. So for us, when I came on, obviously that was nothing. Last year, ours was 94%. And something that I found is very helpful to make public is something like this, where it's like a stewardship chart that has benefits on where the black's at, and then it shows what level those benefits are. And a lot of times you think of that as like a sponsorship thing for an event, but that can also be something that you use throughout your term as a donor. So, and it's culture, it's a culture thing. If you have a philanthropic culture, people tend to understand that a little bit better. And I see all sides of it. You don't want to treat your $50 donors any different than you do your $5,000 donors. But at the same time, you kind of want to treat your $50 donors a little bit differently than you treat your $5,000 donors. Right. Will you make time for your CEO to sit down to dinner with every $50 donor? No. But at your $5,000 level, that might be something that person is interested in. Now, every $5,000 donor is different. I have a couple that are very, very against any type of public recognition whatsoever. But then you have, some $5,000 donors that a portion of the reason they give is for good PR or for good optics. And so coming up with that, having a handwritten letter from the board chair or having access to the annual report before anybody else sees it, being invited to the annual meeting. There are some things like that depending on your level of donors and the amount of money that they're giving, it is necessary to come up to make sure that they're not just going to give a one-time gift and that they're going to continue to give. And there's a fine line, like I said, between treating people differently and treating them as, oh, it's just a $50 donor. Well, no, not at all. But you have to find that fine line for your organization, and it's not always easy. And so I don't mean to make it sound easy, but there are benefits that you can offer depending on the way you steward your donors.
I will say that $50 donor could become your $5,000 donor any day too. And you never know that. You have to treat that $50 with as much respect as you would a $5,000. They may be getting something different, but it's the same amount of respect.
Exactly.
Yeah, I will share a story from years ago when I was fundraising for an organization. We gave a tour of the home to some women from a local retirement community. And there was a woman on the tour who was obnoxious. And, I was like, why did she come to the tour? She didn't seem to be enjoying herself and, just wanted to leave to go to lunch kind of thing. And she ended up sending me a $25 donation, which was very nice of her. And I was honestly quite surprised to get it. About a month later, I got notification of a $250,000 gift from her. She was very taken with what the organization was doing. That's just her personality. And I learned that was just her personality. But, because I called her to thank her for coming to the tour and her $25 gift, that turned into the $250,000 gift. So you never know. And you have to treat each one with the same respect. And some are, as we all know, are more high maintenance than others. And some just don't want anything other than to give you a check.
And Jan, what was her name and email address?
She has since passed away. Yeah. And we
now,
got
Matt,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, if you want to do like an NPR style, like I give you $50, you give me a Hanley Library tote bag, like I wouldn't be opposed to that. So just hit me up. You know how to find me because I could always use a tote bag.
All right. Well, this has been a great discussion. I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in. I will ask one more time, does anybody else have any questions they want to ask or anything they'd like to share with this group before we sign off?
I would like to say something. I'm Johnny Craig from Teens Inc. Your neighbors.
Your neighbors.
Special love neighbor. Hey.
He keeps our bushes trimmed back so we can see the snakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bless him.
Yes, ma'am. And being a small nonprofit, getting into this donor world, because, we're talking about Brady, who's NW Works is known in our community as, people don't have, a go-to. How do a small nonprofit get started in moving ways? We have donors, but we don't have donors like that. We're a working nonprofit, so we see kids and working with special needs individuals. So anybody have any suggestions on how to get that big donor list started during these hard times?
Johnny, I will say that, as I just said before, that $25 donor could be your large donor. It's getting to know them and sharing with them what you're doing and the impact you're making on these kids' lives. And it's how are you telling the story of what you're doing? And Brady, I think probably what you're doing relates quite a bit to what Johnny's doing.
Yeah, so before I came here, I was in the same position of growing a donor list from 0 to whatever. And believe it or not, when I got here, the donor list was 0. But again, like you said, the reputation precedes itself in a way. But I really found if you have any type of social media or any type of place where you have known supporters, that's where I started. A list of supporters, a list of followers, a list of people who like your Facebook page, that is your donor list. And that you start with that, and then you go from there. And then people that support your organization, you start there too. So when we started here, after my first month, we had 36 people. That was what NW Works donor list looked like in June of 2019. And obviously has grown exponentially since then, which is great. But yeah, it starts with one person. It starts with one name. And then you just pick up steam and you make it as available as you can when you're telling people like, hey, would you like to know more about us? All you need is a name and an email address. You don't even need an email address, really. You just need somebody's name and you can find them on Facebook, So it takes a little bit of work, but
Talking is
yeah.
part of fundraising. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I'd also add, stories. I mean, I think what Lizzie and what Jeannie were telling me, it's like, it's always our stories of the women we give grants to, the things that we help. Those are the things that get on fire. Those are the things that people pay attention to. So, it's just, and you've got to have fabulous stories, which I'm sure you do, Johnny. You've got to. So you just use those stories, and hopefully now we'll start using the people to tell their stories. But even if you can't do that, just the story itself and sharing it, I think that's what catches those donors. Everybody will find your mission because, wow, you're doing an amazing thing.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jan, may
Yes.
I make a suggestion to
Absolutely.
the famous Johnny Craig? Hey, Johnny, how are you? Listen, you are well known in this community. You should not, don't say that you're not. And, a place for you to start would be going back to some of those Grafton folks that you knew and worked with for years and years and years, and who would definitely support what you're doing right now. You hit me up for a donation. I'll make one. And I bet you a lot of your other colleagues will too. So go for it and come back again. It's great to have you join us, and do come back the next time. And as a member of the Nonprofit Alliance, I do want to say thank you to everybody who's joining us. There are a lot of regulars, but there's some new people too, and I hope you'll come back. Thank you.
We will be back.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you got a lot out of this, and that you will continue these conversations internally and with the people who were on the panel and on this call today. So have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.